Hello and welcome to assignment number 2, which is using the framework for self-directed professional inquiry. One of the most powerful ways to use this framework that we started studying in class last time is as a support for thinking about teachers taking charge of their own professional learning. It's a way that teachers can engage in new learning. And this requires that we take several steps. Today, we will complete self-assessment and begin thinking about goal setting, although we won't complete that. But throughout the semester, you will work through all of these steps with goals that you've set and determined for yourself. You will complete the self-assessment as assignment number 2. You will broadly cast out 4 ideas, 4 components that you want to explore a little bit more from the Danielson framework. Ultimately, that's kind of as far as we'll get today with this assignment, but ultimately you will write goals for yourself. You will come up with a plan for how you're going to focus on those. You'll carry it out. You'll reflect throughout the process. That doesn't necessarily come at the very after the plan has been carried out. You'll have some sense of closure, and you'll also share the results with your colleagues, and I'll get to that in this assignment. So it's really important to think about this goal of self-directed inquiry is for you to engage in new learning, to focus on an area that requires stretching, maybe a sense of uncomfortableness, risk-taking. Growth hurts. It's like when you go to the gym and you're a little sore from that workout, but then you've built new muscles. And that's kind of how the self-directed inquiry goes, only you're going to decide what it is out of domains 2 and 3 that you want to learn more about. And of course, we're going to be talking about all those elements all semester long, but you are going to sort of focus your assignments in on these particular ones that you choose. So for self-directed study to happen, it has to be grounded in self-assessment. And in our last class, we looked at the Danielson framework, introducing the structure of the Danielson framework, and hopefully at this point you're familiar with those 4 domains. Notice I didn't say that you are extremely knowledgeable or you are a master, but you are familiar with those domains, that you understand within the 4 domains we have components, and within the components there are elements. So your next step is to think about assessing yourself. And in our D2L shell for this week, there is a kind of an altered version of this self-assessment. A lot of times it's done with all 4 domains, but we're going to focus on domains 2 and 3, which, as we talked about, is what happens in the classroom. And this is, of course, practicum, and so we're really trying to get you to focus on that. I'm going to ask that you're really honest with yourself. This self-assessment isn't evaluated as part of a grade. I'm not going to see it. Your field supervisor is not going to see it. No one else is going to see it unless you choose to share it with us. But we're not grading you based on your assessment. And so honesty is really important, because it's through this process that you're going to be able to identify areas that you want to work on. So hopefully now you've done that self-assessment. That's awesome. And now it's time to go into the next steps. So in thinking about this, I want you to remember that the goals that you're ultimately going to write are not about your students' learning. It is about your learning as a teacher, your practice, your growth. And obviously those things are really integrated. They're strongly related with one another. The more you grow as a teacher, hopefully the better learning outcomes that your students will be able to have. But I want you to just hold on to the idea that this is your practice and your learning as a teacher. So to get this assignment done, step 1, you need to review what you wrote in assignment 1. So that was that discussion post that you did before you came to class last Friday. And I want you to review what you wrote. You may at this point have had just sort of some shifting or changing, or maybe not, in responding to those questions. And so if you want to consider this new way that you're thinking about it, and those questions after our work together last class, then you certainly may. I'm not holding you to what you wrote in assignment 1. Then I want you to review the results of your self-assessment. I want you to look at, where are you struggling or not as strong in domains 2 and 3, and sort of pull some of those out. So when you've done that, you're going to narrow it down. I want you to choose 2 components from domain 2 and 2 components from domain 3 that you think you would like to focus on this semester based on what you just did in steps 1 and 2. So now that you've got it narrowed down to 4 of the components, it's time to dive deeper into them. A little homework, you might say. So for each of the 4 components you've chosen, you should find 2 resources that help you learn about that component. So you're going to find a total of 8 resources ultimately, 2 for each component. So what are the appropriate resources? What should you be looking for as you're researching this? So I want you to think about, as professional educators, you really need to be able to read peer-reviewed and research-based text to help inform your practice as a teacher. I want you to look for those types of things: peer-reviewed, research-based, materials from an expert. And you don't have to limit yourself simply to written text. If you find a video of an expert in the field, and you really need to think about who is that expert and what are they doing. Are they trying to sell you something? What is that? And I really want you to give that some professional consideration. But a video clip is just fine as a resource. And I just want to acknowledge, it doesn't mean that the other resources out there aren't helpful, websites that are full of teaching ideas or games or classroom management. That's all great. Pinterest is great. It's just not the type of resource for this type of work that we're doing. So I want to give you an example. My example is going to come out of domain 1. Again, you're going to be working in domains 2 and 3, but I'm going to do domain 1 for my example. And in looking at domain 1, I decided that component 1B, demonstrating knowledge of students, is something that really interests me. But that's huge. That's really wide. And so I had to look at 1B, demonstrating knowledge of students, and then I looked more closely at what the elements were underneath that. And when I looked at the elements and I used my resource, right, my textbook that we all downloaded for this class, to see what were the elements in there. And when I did this, I decided that I want to strengthen my understanding of how children learn. I want to know more about the learning process, that's going to help me. And so went to the Montana Library website, I reviewed resources, actually went to the library, I looked at the books, I skimmed through probably about 12 resources as I was trying to figure out what it is I want. And so even though I had narrowed it down to the element of knowing more about how children learn, I narrowed it down even further, and I decided what I really wanted to focus on was social constructivism. I want to know more about how learning happens in social situations and how children construct their understandings. And so as I was reviewing all these resources, I came down with 2 that I thought would be the most helpful for me. One was a book, and one was out of a peer-reviewed journal. And so I selected those 2. And then I read them. Obviously, I did not read the whole book, but I did skim. I used the index, and I found the parts that were most applicable to what was interesting to me and what I thought would be most helpful. I did read the article in its entirety. And when I had finished that in a Word document, I created a summary of the information that I learned from those 2 sources. One summary from both of those 2 sources. And then I also cited my sources in APA style per the syllabus, where it describes that that's what you want to do. So that was one of the components. So then if I was going to do this assignment, I was going to repeat it for each of the components I'd chosen through my self-assessment. So I would end up with 4 paragraphs with 8 citations, 2 for each paragraph, right? 4 paragraphs, 1 for each component that I had investigated. And again, I didn't just choose the component, but as I chose the component, I looked at the elements, I narrowed that down, and I really thought about what it is I want to learn more about. And that's the foundation of the work I'm going to do through the semester. So once you've been in your placement for about a week, you're going to narrow it down to 2. 1 for domain 2 and 1 for domain 3. And then your work this semester is going to be based on those 2 areas. Of course, we're going to be talking about all the elements, all the domains, all the components. We're going to be doing lots of work around all of them, but your focus, your growth is going to be driven pretty heavily in these 2 areas. This is what real teachers do. You know, in one of your exit tickets from the last class, somebody said, oh my God, this is so much. How can we possibly do this? Well, teachers cannot improve their practice in every single element every single day, every single month. You have to focus in on what do I need to work on right now, really focus, practice, get that established, and then move on to something else. And so this is, again, habit of mind. We're trying to get you in this reflective growth cycle mindset, if you will. So this work that you're doing right now is really foundational to several assignments and components of our class. Your 10 structured reflective practices, some of them will be focused on your specific area. Presentation of topic at the end of the semester, your professional growth paper, and your classroom practice. And so those will all all of this work will be coming together and manifesting itself in this. So as we close this out, I just want to say that what you are going to submit is a Word document, and on that Word document, you are going to have your 4 paragraphs, your 4 summary paragraphs with the 2 cited works that you used to create your paragraph summaries for this assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know. Email me sooner rather than later, and I look forward to seeing you next time.